And today, Mr. Dave Tindoll is going to kind of get up and talk to you a little bit about how the transformation from where we began with the Installation Management Agency, the Installation Management Command, all the way, to where it's come to now. And he's got some of his great garrison commanders up here to do that. Mr. Tindoll is the Director of IMCOM Sustainment, U.S. Army Installation Management Command. He serves as the Director, Atlantic Region, U.S. Army Installation Management Command. He's going to talk to you a little bit of how that's changed a little bit and how they are task organized a little bit differently to support our soldiers. As Director, responsible for management and execution of all installation management programs, a 28 active active and reserve component U.S. Army installation, joint bases, and Army support activities located in 15 states and Puerto Rico. I'm not going to take any more time because he really needs to have some time to show you how and what's taking place in the Installation Management Command. After he does that, we're going to introduce these great garrison commanders, and we're going to answer some tough questions and hopefully have some time for you to ask them some questions. Sir.
Thanks. How do you turn it on?
Bam.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody. General Swan, thanks for giving us this opportunity to be here. I, along with these great commanders here to my right, are honored to be here with you today. One of the things I've done in past life, I've been a garrison commander. So I got the opportunity to do that pre-IMO, and at the inception of IMO, a couple of people in here, Mr. Sakowitz being one, brought me in to be one of the first deputy directors while I was still in uniform. It's Southeast region, and I've had the opportunity to work in 3 regions since. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about this latest transformation we're going through to give me my 4th region I get to work in. So I know that in this room, there's quite a few prior or serving garrison commanders, deputy garrison commanders, or garrison command sergeant majors. So this is going to interest me. Would all of you, current and prior, stand up? Garrison commanders, deputies, command sergeant majors?
Okay, sir.
That's quite a few. Yeah, you get to stand up too, TW. The role of those individuals and these individuals is a close fight. So a lot of discussion has been done today on the deep fight. The deep fight's got to do with the resources, et cetera, but what they get into is a close fight. They don't get asked to approve the POM. They have to deal with the day-to-day struggles. So hopefully some of your questions, and I know you want to get to the questions, so we'll get to that quickly. But that's what we're here to talk about today, is specifically the close fight. Big words on readiness. It is the Chief of Staff's Army priority. We know that, but readiness begins on the installation. Everything a soldier does somewhere, he does it on an installation. So the intent, what we do, is we supply support to that. There's 2 primary tasks of those installations. Those garrison commanders are there to do 2 things. One is sustain facilities. Every facility out there is owned by these officers. And the second thing they do is provide base op services. Now there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 56 base op services. It ranges from everything from running a golf course to issuing an ID card to making sure that you have access control at the gates. The width and breadth, I've heard many senior commanders tell me what is expected of a garrison commander is nowhere close to a BCT commander. The range of what he has to cover, he or she has to cover, he has to touch, is much different than a BCT commander. So a lot of these individuals you see become chiefs of staff of divisions and take other jobs because that wealth of experience they pick up in the 2 to 3 years they spend being a commander. Same with the deputies and command sergeant majors. I want to go through, if I may, with the next slide, talk just very quickly about how things are structured, because we're going through a transformation, and I want to highlight that before we start with the garrison commanders. Here you see a typical Army-wide diagram. Installation Management Command has 3 tiers. This first tier is Lieutenant General Dahl. He is the CG. What you see over there on your left, my right side, is those things called IMCOM training, readiness, sustainment. I'm going to talk about that. I'm one of those guys. All the garrisons work for one of those individuals. So there's 3 tiers. You've got General Dahl in San Antonio, and then you've got 4 other people like me, and then we have the garrison commanders. And I'll get into the transformation. Next slide, please. At the installation, there are 3 people that make things happen. 3 leaders, so to speak, if I can call them that. The 3 leaders I want to start with is the senior commander. Now, those of you in here that may be civilians and don't understand what a senior commander is, he's basically the mayor. A lot of people confuse the Garrison Commander as the mayor. No, Garrison Commander is the city manager. The mayor is the guy making the decisions. The city manager is a professional that runs the city from time to time. So the guy who sets the priorities in the way the Army does business is a senior commander. Those of you familiar with how the Air Force and Navy does business, they don't have that term. They call them installation commanders. Many of those are 06s. We don't allow our 06s to be installation commanders. Must be a general officer. So with the exception of just a few handful, very few installations, they're all general officers. Where I fit in, the middle guy, I'm the guy that's got to validate resources and ensure they get resourced right, make sure they stay in compliance. I bring with this small team experience to the table to make sure that whatever service they're delivering is delivered the same no matter where you go. I used to listen to Mr. Sakowicz talk about Starbucks, McDonald's. Wherever you go in the world, there may be different conditions, certain things on the menu or the way a time is set up for McDonald's or whatever, but the product you get is the same product. For what these individuals do, the task they provide is the same task. The standard they provide it to is the same standard. Conditions are going to be different. And it's the job of the directors in the middle with a small team to make sure that's performed properly. And obviously, the city managers in this case are the guys that make it happen every day. Slide, please. So we're transforming. IOC, initial operating capability was 1 November. FOC, we are looking at somewhere this fall, somewhere hopefully between the October-November timeframe. We're striving to make that happen now. What specifically is happening? You see up there the definition of the transformation. The intent for this was to generate savings to buy back readiness. General Milley specifically asked General Dahl, you got to do something. I need help on the readiness side. I got to take it from the generating force. That's how we got hit. So specifically, what happened? If you look down there as number 1, the goal was to return to General Milley $100 million. In a minute, I'll tell you we didn't quite make that, but that was a goal, return $100 million. Take $100 million out of Hyde to give back. Restructure all echelons, whether it be headquarters, what then was the regions, and also at the garrisons. Number 2, on IMCOM approach and results, reduce the size by IMCOM headquarters by 25%. I would challenge any business out there in corporate America to run the size organization with the amount of money and what we do on any given day, or what they may do with the lead to lead ratio. So 1 out of every 4 individuals at IMCOM headquarters will go away in FY19. Reduce the garrison in strength by 5%, but notice what I got in parentheses where it talks about 10% between 15 and 18. Now that's not a salami slice. Some installations are losing as much as 20%, others may be around 5%, but the average is in the 15%. Does that 15% make a difference? It makes a huge difference. What that equated to is just over $80 million that we gave back to General Milley to buy back. The third step was changing the organization. The CG changed the way he was structured at headquarters with the senior leaders. He changed the regions to directorates, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Go to slide, please. Specifically, he took went to 3 functional directorates. So in a minute, I'll show you a chart that explains exactly what this is, so you have a better understanding. Before we operated regionally, meaning geographic base, and I've got a slide that'll show you that. We went from that to functional. What is functional? Functional is FORSCOM specifically. Functional is TRADOC. Functional is AMC. So the decision was to do that in order to better align ourselves to help make those decisions of how you're going to do less with less, because you're not going to do more with less. And now the ACOMs have a major role in making decisions of what less with less means. They did not necessarily have that before. However, they've always had that in Pacific and at Europe. So now they've got it CONUS. And again, we're in the process of moving from IOC to FOC. So number 5 on the service delivery, I want you to note physical constraints, which exist, sequestration, et cetera, and return to pre-war standards. Now, really, what does he mean by that, pre-war standards? A lot of discussion ensued today about the benefits our soldiers and their families receive. Can we afford to deliver that in the future? I can tell you today, they're going to tell you in a minute with what they've been given, they can't. So hard decisions have got to be made. We're going to go to those 4 stars and ask them with their teams to help make the right decisions on what gets cut. And I'm going to go through the examples, but it gives you different examples of what I'm talking about. I want to note the number 2 bullet. We're allowing senior commanders, because discussion was made earlier about expectations of soldiers and families. That's going to be hard because there isn't an Army standard anymore. We're allowing senior commanders on every installation to make that decision. Now, that forms a problem. The problem exists, you'll have a senior commander making a decision. 3 months later, he changes his command. There'll be somebody else come in. He's got a better idea. He'll put it back. The POM doesn't support that, so you're taking it out of hide. So this is, it's a meat grinder, and we've got to work this out or how we're going to do it. But the decision right now, senior commanders make decisions on what happens or does not happen when you get into the realm of how we're going to manage expectations. Okay, slide, please. So what does this break down? So some of you that may be interested in it, what you see up there is Europe and Pacific at the 2 ends. They did not change. What changed were the 3 in the middle. I'm the IMCOM sustainment guy. I get the mixed bag. If you notice, the readiness individual is pretty clean with Force Com and Army Reserve. IMCOM training is pretty clean where he adds West Point, Carlisle. All right, slide. This is what it used to look like, just so you have an understanding. Before, I had 29 installations. Today, I have 17. So I had 29 of these individuals I was rater for. How well did I do with that? Hopefully, I'll do better with 17. Still a tough number, still a tough task to make happen. So that's just to give you an idea how it was and how it is. And that's really, I got another slide, but you go ahead and turn it off, please. So again, I want to close my comments, if I can, TW, with just the point I want to make from priorities. So General Dahl is working hard to meet the Chief's priorities of readiness. He has set certain focus areas for us as his subordinate leaders to fall in line with. So we're in the process of recalibrating expectations, delivering affordable and sustainable services. His priorities are number 1, infrastructure. You can't do anything else unless you got the infrastructure there to start with. Number 2, emergency services. Now, what am I talking? Fire, police, security, you got to have that to begin with. Those are non-negotiable. I haven't seen a senior commander yet that wants to negotiate any of the emergency services. Number 3, support the training. Now, we don't actually do the training, but a lot of what we do on our installation is to support those mission side to conduct training. Number 4, soldier programs. The last priority is family programs. So if you don't have enough to go around, what's the first thing that's going to get cut? Just keep that in mind. Those are the priorities we're working off of. So with that.
That's transformation, again. We've got 4 garrison commanders up here. First of all, we've got Colonel Edward Deacon Maddox, Garrison Commander of Letterkenny Army Depot. To my right, your left. We've got Colonel John Lawrence, Garrison Commander of Fort Riley. We've got Colonel Angelia Holbrook, Garrison Commander Fort Belvoir. Yeah, buddy. And we got Colonel Pat Duggan as the Garrison Commander, Joint Base Fort Myer, Henderson Hall.
Duggan.
Duggan. Sorry, Duggan.
I call him Duggan.
But we've got some questions that we're gonna throw at them right off the bat. We hope that the questions will get down into some of the details of some of the things that we've already talked about. It actually started out with when Jack Sharash was up here talking about the Army's energy sustainability and survivability strategy, ES2. So a lot of the questions that we're going to ask right off the bat have to deal with installations 2025. So we can you get a chance to hear a little bit of how they're addressing the challenges that they're having with that, with the fiscal constraints that they have. Some of the same challenges that we had back in the old days, but a lot more tougher than we could ever imagine. So we're going to start off with the first question, John. John, how is your installation addressing energy security and resiliency in accordance with the Army energy security and sustainability strategies, despite the fiscal challenges that we're having?
Well, one of the things we learned today was about net zero. Fort Riley is embracing net zero beyond all measures. Currently, over the past several years, we've looked at the wastewater system as well as net zero water in terms of possibly permeable pavement parking lots. Sounds kind of technical, but bottom line is what it is. The water goes through the parking lot, is separated, and then restored. Now, may not seem like a big deal. However, that water can be reclaimed. It can be used in those facilities to, say, flush toilets. It can also be used to look at the ground chemistry changes. Why is that a concern? Because land is a concern. Readiness takes land. So we cannot have any environmental challenges because, as you notice, over the years, a lot of the installations have lost training land because of environmental issues. So as we monitor the changes in the chemistry in the ground from the water, we can better enhance that and take care of problems before they become a problem. Additionally, we're looking at membrane bioreactors for our wastewater. That will be able to reclaim water for our wash racks. If you've ever been to Fort Riley, Kansas, you know that we have very heavy clay type mud. That mud takes a lot of pressure and a lot of water to get off those track vehicles, okay? So we go through a lot of water. Well, we can reclaim that by using the membrane and then from wastewater, claim that water, as well as create energy sources from that. And yes, it sounds kind of bad, but fertilizer to sell. And we have land use around our post that we allow farmers to come in. They put a fire break around our area and they farm that land. And we can sell them also that fertilizer. So again, we look for different ways to get above that. Now, when we talk net zero, though, you have to look at facilities and you have to look at the installation. For Kansas, for me to use net zero energy, it's not feasible because I get electricity at 7.4 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the lowest in the Army, okay? My gas rate is just over $4. Again, lowest in the Army. We did the research, and that's the key. You have to do the research of where you're going to break even. For us, it would be 40-plus years. It's not worth it. I can get better service right now using the grid I'm on, and I don't have to make that change. Again, it comes down to knowing what resources you have and being able to implement those for either savings or leave it the way it is because it's not broken and you're not losing money.
And Angie, I got a question for you. How will the reorganization of IMCOM support your ability to address the emerging needs of your garrison today and in the future?
Well, one way that we know that the reorganization is going to work is we test fired it right here in the MDW area. So those of you familiar with the MDW area, that we have 4 installations here in MDW that fall under our senior commander, Major General Brad Becker, who's going to change out here in the next month. But so in MDW, you have Fort Belvoir, Myer, Henderson, Hall, Meade, and AP Hill. And so we all fall under the same senior mission commander who understands our needs. And so those emerging requirements that come, we go to him, and he's able to easily synchronize the resources we need, and we're able to make decisions quickly. So when IMCOM decided to align functionally, they drew upon a lot of the things that we learned in our process, having been aligned under the same senior commander. So I think they took a lot of the lessons that we learned here under that, and so we find that it works for us. Even though Mr. Tindoll's got a couple of strap hangers that aren't necessarily sustainment oriented, having everybody aligned under a single functional, I think that helps us a lot. So I don't see that it's going to affect our mission in the least.
Cool. All right, got a big question here, number 3. It's going to take all of you to try to get a hold of this, okay? Installation Strategy 2025 addresses 6 goals of the installation key business drivers. Those key business drivers being installation, energy, and environment, okay? Those 6, the 6 goals of enhance installation resiliency, prioritize the Army's facility investment, optimize infrastructure to support force structure requirements, set conditions for future background, oversee development of the National Museum of the United States Army, and enhance contingency basing capabilities. Pat, we're going to start off with you with the enhanced installation resiliency. Can you just talk a little bit about how we're addressing that in accordance with the Strategy 2025?
Well, yes, I can. Hey, I see some friendly faces out there, and not so, hopefully, I I warn you, I'm going to go 90 degrees on this. The one topic I'm going to hit on is, hey, we've got to do a better job when we rethink installation security here in the future. How much more brick, mortar, and razor-wired fences and guards do we need? Physical security only keeps the curious out. It's the stuff you don't see, the security through obscurity that will become increasingly important. The future of installation security is less about what you see and more about what you don't. Better preparation against the emerging threats of virtualization, abstraction, and miniaturization. From miniaturized aerial drones, unmanned boats, and cars strapped with homemade bombs, or worse, to cyber attacks on industrial controls to arrest Army, rail yard, line haul, rolling stock. Bottom line, I believe we're still applying linear solutions of gates, guards, and fences when the threats are all anything but linear. Instead, we must explore the nexus between the traditional physical, logical, and information realms to build a much more holistic approach in our age of perpetual terrorist and natural threats. Cyber-enhanced security is all about becoming ad hoc, mobile, and meshed, with dynamic networks linking surveillance systems, remote sensors, and thermal devices to the law enforcement personnel that need it. Gradually changing the conversation from how many individuals to run a security system to how many security systems an individual can run. A first step to that end is to break down our superannuated stovepipes that deal with information, physical, and logical access controls. I propose establishing a chief security officer for AXIM and IMCOM, which could more holistically manage and fuse all three areas. The physical, which is the traditional LEA, DES, and brick and mortar, the logical, which is the CIO and the 6 functions, and the informational, which is the G1, PII, PAI, and the databases. And ultimately, I think part of this spirit of this plan is rethinking installation security and correctly task organizing around that mission and changing the way we support, sustain, and most importantly, in my mind, defend.
Cool. How about that? Well, now the next couple of points, John, I want you to take. That is prioritizing the Army's facility investments and optimizing infrastructure to support force structure requirements.
Okay, one thing I do want to say is the first thing with prioritize, the first thing I think of is my senior mission commander, because I have got to be nested and synced with his vision and what he sees for the future and what he wants to do for readiness for his soldiers. So for us, one of the big things was to improve conditions of mission support facilities, mission training facilities, basically live, virtual, and constructive. We know that it gets more and more costly to go to NTC. We have units go there. Well, I've got a unit prepping right now. But the thing is, we have the training land, so we can actually do that same similar training and be able to go across our training area in that same manner. But we have to do it in the live, virtual, constructive realm. In other words, I have a battalion in the field, I've got personnel on simulators, and then I've got people in gaming. And they're all linked to one system where a brigade commander can look at the map and he can't tell the difference. So we have to look at that first. Then we look at repurposing facilities. Those are taking old defects that are no longer valid and making them COFs, the company operations facilities, okay? We're taking the old facilities and using that SRM money because we don't have the MILCON dollars anymore. So we have to take those facilities and reutilize them for something else, something that we need for the future. Goes back to the multi-purpose building we talked about earlier today. The next is unaccompanied housing. Now, great thing with Fort Riley, I have no Q3, no Q4 quarters. But the issue is I have no Q3, Q4 that soldiers are living in. But I do have facilities that need to be upgraded. Now, with that said, we always are going to have to upgrade roads, infrastructure, things of that nature. But the issue comes down to is we have that SRM money to do that. Then we look at family housing. I have an RCI partner that is incredible. We work hand in hand right now, and currently that RCI partner is demolishing 1950s houses to build brand new houses for our soldiers. Again, this isn't costing me anything but that partnership that we have with that agency. Again, the other thing is dispose of RLBs, the relocatable buildings, because they cost us money to maintain. We don't need them anymore. Excess space, we can get rid of it. So we take down what we can as we're waiting for major demolition money. Now, to optimize infrastructure, you've got to look at first space utilization. So the first thing you have to do is you have to understand what you have excess. And you have to physically go into a building, measure out the building, take the standards, and measure that out. And then you can determine that excess. What we found when I went into command is all that information was not in the system. As well as on Fort Riley, I've got 158 historic homes and buildings, excuse me. Well, to optimize those, that takes a lot of money to basically go in and refurbish those buildings. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for partners, federal entities. I've got regional partners from the NEC. I've got regional partners from the CPAC, a regional CHARA on Fort Riley, all in my historic buildings on my main post. They are taking care of that refurbishment. I also just recently signed a agreement with the Veterans Administration to bring 400 employees onto Fort Riley as a call center. They, again, are getting a historic post. They're going to put approximately $10 million. I look for other people's money. I have to. That's the way SRM works right now because I do not have the money to basically do everything I need to. The other thing that comes down with that is once you have the current capacity analysis, because you know what you have excess, you need to keep that updated because you never know when someone calls and says, hey, I need to know if you can house and put motor pools in for 4 engineer battalions or a light BCT, which, oh, by the way, Fort Riley can take if anyone's helping. But the bottom line comes down to is you have to know what you can do, when you can do it, and how much money you have to support it. And you have to go out and look for other people's money to help you with that. Because as we move to the future, you know, John Lawrence's opinion, we're going to see a whole lot more purple. We're going to see joint. We're going to see federal agencies working at these installations because we have the capacity and we have the resources available for them to go into there, and then we share the cost.
Cool. Okay. Dave, talk to us about setting the conditions for BRAC, for future BRAC round, as discussed.
BRAC, boy, that for us, that's a loaded question. So there's 2 pieces I'd like to address. These officers have got a major role of the relationship with their communities. And as many of you already know, many of the communities have organizations that are set up for one purpose, to avoid BRAC against their installation. They got to walk a tightrope. Trust me, they don't do anything without their lawyer with them, making sure that what they say, interaction they have is with the right interaction. So for them to talk BRAC, that's out of their lane, way above their pay grade. However, I want to throw one thing out there for everyone. We spend millions on leasing today. There are Army organizations belonging to many entities that through the Corps of Engineers, they have leases for. I got briefed the other day in Huntsville with me getting ready to go to Redstone. The number of leases that AMC has in Huntsville. And my question to my Garrison commanders, start finding space. So think of the money, when you're talking BRAC, think of the money you could save by pulling those leased organizations back on base. Number 1 issue, General Master, Detroit Arsenal. I've got people that need to be here, but I don't have the MILCON to put them. I'm maxed out on facilities. I can't move them to places to where you have facilities available. I need something here. We would save as the Army millions by moving back lease space. That we have got to work. We got to do a better job of. We got to work because we don't know. We don't see that. That's something we're blind to. We got to work with the Corps and work with our mission partners to find out what that is. So there's 2 sides to this. One is we got to kind of avoid BRAC talk, but at the same time we got to look at what we can do to save the Army the money so that we can put the people in these spaces. You heard Mr. Robinson and General Bingham today. I think the number with Carl was 22% or something like that. I'd love to see the number of that 22% that we could fill if we could bring the leases back in the house.
Awesome. Angie, You got the National Museum of the United States Army in the process of being built finally. I stuck a shovel in the ground when I was there when General King was the vice. That's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Talk to it.
All right, I'm so excited, and it won't happen on my watch, but I'm really excited about it. I'd like to pull from our last Sec Army's speech in the groundbreaking. He said, "While we are the last service to build a national museum, it is no measure of the value of the service and sacrifice of our sacred citizens." And one of the first words I learned on the job is revenue. Can I say that with me now? Revenue. The construction of the National Museum of the United States Army, NAMUSA. Can you say that one? NAMUSA. I'm teaching you new words. See, these guys are a lot smarter than I am, but I'm looking to get words in my vocabulary. It would be a significant boost to the installation and the economy of South Fairfax County. The estimated annual visitors of NAMUSA is in the range of somewhere $500,000 to $700,000 a year. So you can bet my community partners are very excited about that. The Virginia teachers can bring their students to this new museum, and a museum is really not a good word for what this is going to be. It is going to be an amazing site. They can bring their students here, and their walk through the village of what will be the National Museum will be school-approved program of instructions that will give them credit for history lessons from as far back to as far forward as you can imagine. It's going to be extremely important to us, our resident community partners, and the privatization, because you can imagine when people come to visit, they're going to want to see not only the museum, but they might want to play golf on my best golf course in the Army, Mr. Tindoll. Just saying. And all the other things in the local community that are business drivers for us. So we are very excited about having the National Museum on Fort Belvoir.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, back to you, Dave, on how enhancing contingency basing capabilities.
Well, now this is a really good question, because a lot of leaders in the Army has asked, now for 12 years, you've put the base ops professionals in one organization. And in that organization, we need help. We'd like to get IMCOM individuals and get IMCOM working with us in different places overseas. So today, we have one contingency base, and I happen to have it at Sotocano, Honduras. Now, the Army's been in Sotocano for, I would say, close to 30 years. So we started back in 2008 working installation management into Sotocano. When we first went in there, there was no running water. You basically lived in hooches. It was like going to the field. And today you got barracks, you got a DFAC. Jeff Cairns back there. You remember, Jeff, you're the deputy when we went into the place that did all that. So that's the only one we have. However, since that time, General Hodges in Europe has asked for help of Mike Formica to go into some of the Eastern European countries and put in some installation management capability into that. I was asked over a year ago with Third Army to go into some of 6 of their areas. Matter of fact, we had an L&O team with Third Army for almost a year, working contingency basing, and they took from us a team of subject matter experts that we used to help coach teach their people that they put in. Mm-hmm. And it went into also, went over into training. They wanted to send us their leaders that they were going to send overseas so we could train them in some of this quote-unquote science of base ops. But today, with General Dahl, we have shut that down. And the reason we've shut that down, the Army proper has not recognized the fact that we want IMCOM doing that. So the dilemma we have, the dilemma that General Dahl has, he doesn't have enough money to do what we're told to do on the bases I showed you on the slide. To take out of that and send those right people, those professionals, overseas to run those bases, all you're doing is further inhibiting the capability we have either Korea, Germany, or in CONUS. So I think somewhere in the future, my gut says somewhere in the future, the Army's going to see the benefit of that, but the Army's got to fund that. The Army's got to give us a resource in order to make it happen. But I can tell you that the leaders in the field want us. They're screaming for it. But right now, the only thing we have, TW, is Sotocano.
Okay. Okay. Here's question number 4. In what ways can industry support your efforts to meet these goals addressed in Installation 2025? Deacon.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I will tell you that it's a very unique mission at a depot, and I think it would be beneficial if I backed up a little bit and at least explained a little bit about what a depot does.
Yeah.
First off, a depot is a maintenance activity, and we do recapitalization, we do reset, we do new build on the Army's equipment. And at Letterkenny, we specialize in air defense systems. So we specialize in Patriot, Avenger. We also ground missile systems as well. We are an all-cost funded facility, and when you talk about revenue, everything at a depot is completely and totally focused on generating combat power, and in terms of performing that maintenance mission to generate weapon systems that then get shipped out to the various post-Canson stations around the Army. So when you look at a Public Works Directorate or a DUM, yes, we still have DUMs. When you look at DES, everything is there to support the maintenance mission. And essentially, if it does not contribute to the bottom line and the revenue that we generate, we don't have it. So we don't have a lot of those services. I do have a child development center, but that is mostly for some of the active duty personnel in the area, and it's outsourced to the Carlisle Barracks runs it for me. So we have a very narrow focus on our core competency, and that is to maintain surge capacity to repair the Army's equipment in time of war. So in order to maintain that surge capacity, we frequently partner with industry. We do it all the time, have been for the better part of 15 years. And we've got very notable partners that help us build air defense systems for the Army. And when this question came up, I will tell you that one of the things that I would like to see is partnering to build facilities, because MILCON construction funds are hard to come by in the industrial base. They're hard to come by in the Army, period, but particularly so in the industrial base. And so what we would look for is how can we get facilities constructed for us so that we can go in and satisfy our Title X responsibilities to repair our nation's equipment. And that's what it's all about. The partners have a requirement to generate a piece of equipment, or we have a requirement to generate maintenance on that equipment. We partner together in a facility that's built by them. We populate it with our people. Some of their people come in and work in that facility as well. And in that way, we're able to not only satisfy that industrial partners' revenue requirements, their bottom line for their shareholders, but also satisfy the bottom line for building combat power for the Army, keeping our skill sets and our critical skills sharp so we can surge at the time when it's required. So I think one of the things that, at least on the AMC side, we've been doing partnerships for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've got a lot of lessons learned in that area.
Good.
That might be beneficial.
All right, Pat, can you follow up?
So I'm going to take this hard right. The Internet of Things will radically change the business of installation management as we know it. What are we doing to prepare, and are we considering the right business models for it? We talk about 2025, but by 2020, there's going to be over 50 billion connected devices, and that's just 3 years away. Wearables, ingestibles, sensors, devices, undreamed of tech, and on and on. It's going to be on us, around us, under us, and over the installations, and will be perpetually fueled by declining costs, ever more powerful processing capabilities, and ever-growing availability. Everything that can be connected will be, creating unforeseen implications to our soldiers, residents, and workforce, and their intractable fixation to the latest device. So what do we do when our entire population becomes a wireless node, constantly emitting and receiving data from innumerable locations across countless devices for limitless reasons on our installations? Are we monetizing opportunities and partnering with commercial investors in the private sector to drive savings for our next generation of installations? Are we examining the right business model for installation management for tomorrow's Internet of Things? Is it about hospitality service? Is it about industrial-based supply chain? Or maybe both or neither? Soon, automation, sensors, and AI will drive unrealized and unintended consequences to all our infrastructure. How do we ensure they are compatible and secure? What does they even mean? Have we defined our installation key platforms for the IoT? Are they the correct ones? Is it SkyFis, CubeSats, ManNets, and industrial control servers? Then, how do we tie those platforms to the extensible zoo of sensor devices, smartphones, tablets, wearables, homes, cars, roads, and utilities? Even when we identify our key platforms, each one still requires constant firmware and patches. Even more, every connection requires a secure and dynamic API. Do we have in the Army the functional virtualization to dynamically configure these networks infrastructure for different situations, circumstances, and demands? Do we have the ability to protect all of it from attack? Even more, as the IoT breeds on our bases to connect all our inside things to our outside our walls, our privatized housing, utilities, transportation, and supply chains, are we considering how to best leverage this inexorable momentum? You know, condition-based maintenance, life cycle fleet management, energy efficiency, improving our customer satisfaction with facial recognition and AI biometrics, increasing productivity with beacon-based tracking, installation traffic analytics, smart weather systems. What about driverless shuttles, autonomous snowplows and grass mowers, customizing customer experience with 3D printing on demand, and adjustable pills to relay vital signs to our virtual clinics, wearable technology that emits preferences for individual room microclimates, and on and on. Bottom line, hey, IMCOM, Axim, are we considering the right business model for installation management in our era of the IoT?
Wow.
He enjoys doing that, by the way.
Wow.
I'm an SF guy that loves cyber, so I know
telling
it's
you.
hard for you.
Good. All right. Hey, we got another question before we get into some of the questions, because we got some more questions that's coming from the audience out here. And that one is this one. And this is a free-for-all. All right. So when I put it out there, just go at it. Okay. Here we go. What impact has the reduction in human resources had on your DPW's ability to meet these goals, and what measures are you taking to overcome these shortages?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. First of all, one of the major things we have to look at is privatization. That's of electricity, wastewater, and find out if that's feasible for you. The other is TDA changes, basically looking at where we need those DPW personnel based off of the demand. With that said, I mean, we're in the process of right-sizing our TDAs now to fiscal year 19, and then we're going all the way up to 25 to look at where we are physically for DPW. And the last thing is prioritizing the projects. Because what we have to do is we got to reduce the workloads of some of those DPWs. So how do you do that? Well, the old saying goes, to save money, you got to make money. Or, yeah, it takes money to make money. Sorry, excuse me. Like for Fort Riley, we're using an energy-saving performance contract this year. We're going to replace our heating systems and our cooling systems that are antiquated, because that takes 90%, if you've ever been to Fort Riley, 90% of my DPW in the summertime, because it's over 100 degrees, and in the wintertime, the same thing. They're fixing heating and cooling systems. I need to free them up to do other things. So by replacing those systems, I expect the calls to go down on that. So those are a couple things.
I think we talked about priorities, right? We already talked. I mean, you got to prioritize right, and you've got to communicate that right, and the systems that get seen at the top of the system, right? Our ISR, and you got to, the picture has to be clear. I mean, if our plans doesn't have it depicted correctly, then somebody at the top of the system wants to restation somebody to Belvoir, and I don't have room for them, or I have room for them and they don't see that I have room for them. I mean, you have to be clear about that. And your DPWs, like John said, we don't have the manpower because we've cut TDAs, and it's like a drill we do like every 90 days right now, it seems like. So, I mean, I think that's it. Getting clear pictures up, audio matching visual, and that what the chief of the vice used to say. I think that's one of the things that we got to do. And right now, that doesn't seem to be happening as much as we'd like. Over.
You having the same problem at Letterkenny? Or are you experiencing the same shortfalls in your public works?
What we do is we staff to workload. So if we have the workload, then we'll ramp up staff and we'll add people. And if we don't have the workload, or if the workload goes away, then we shed the workforce, so to speak.
You got the different rules with all COL too that some may not understand.
Correct. So we staff to the approved funded workload for what's been projected out for the next 2 years. So we will ramp up or ramp down depending on what our workload is going to do. Right now, our trend is downward. We're ramping down. So we're coming down from a total number of direct labor hours to a much smaller direct labor hour workload. But I would.
There's a move afoot by OSD to get rid of reimbursable manpower and force it to be direct, which you will not have that flexibility. And they're really pushing hard for the Army to turn all reimbursable Army workload into direct workload. And there's pushback on that, but you'll lose that flexibility within ours.
Interesting.
The pressure that I'm feeling right now is the hiring freeze, to be honest. I'm sure you all feel it too, but the ability to go out and get people to work funded workload to generate combat power is becoming difficult. So
Yeah.
that's the pressure. So.
Pat, how about it down there at Joint Base Henderson Hall?
What was the question?
The question is the impact that the reduction in human resources is having on your DPW's ability to do all the great things that you needed them to do there for you.
Can I get a new one?
Just talk real
Pat's
properly
got
about it.
Can I get a new question?
He's got artificial intelligence.
That one's
Yeah.
beaten.
Okay, I'm gonna send one down specifically
No,
for you.
That's Maddox.
Oh, that's Maddox?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Who's giving? Is this yours?
No,
Mr. Tindoll.
yours is coming. Yours is coming.
Go ahead, Colonel Max. Let's get some questions here that people have sent in.
Okay, this question is from Lieutenant General Swan. What are the major differences between commanding at a depot and commanding at a more traditional Army post? The thing that I will tell you, sir, is that the major difference is I have pressures to maintain a very low labor rate. So a direct labor employee basically recovers all of my overhead through his or her labor. And so I can add services, I can add an ambulance, I can beautify the installation, I can do all those things because I have the money to do that. However, if I add so much overhead to the point where my direct labor rates start to rise, then my customers, the people that contract me to maintain their systems, have the option to walk away. And when they walk away, I get caught in what's called the industrial base. I start circling the bottom of the commode, essentially. And so what happens is when my customers pull their workload out, I'm too top heavy. And what I've got is too much overhead. And now my direct laborers have to work, the rate just keeps ballooning and more customers pull out and you do the death spiral. And so that is the major difference. So how do we get around that is we have to lean out everything. Everything is leaned out to the point where there is no fluff. There's no fat in the system. If it doesn't, like I said earlier, if it does not contribute to the bottom line, we cut it out. And it's not coming back, and it would be a hard sell to a commander to add a function or add a service that did not contribute to the bottom line. And so that's the
And I'd offer that, sir, by having the opportunity to run some AMC pilots a couple years ago. I had specifically Anniston and Holston Army Depot. If business is good, life is good on the installation. If business is bad, installation suffers. So it kind of goes up and down with the business. That was my observation compared to the way it's run on the appropriated side, to where there was an Army standard, and here's your resources, you execute your Army standard. For what that's worth. I've got a question, TW. This is a good one because this is a bad habit, so this is a good one to address. I'm concerned that two people in a row have characterized our installations as FORCECOM TRADOC AMC installations. How will IMCOM ensure appropriate, consistent readiness funding for large concentration of FORCECOM, USASOC, and other operational units at so-called TRADOC installations, the Forts Benning, Silva, Wachusett, Gordon, and others, and main training ranges that active guard reserve units can use such as like Knox. So that's a great question because that's habit on our side. So the right terminology is FORSCOM led, TRADOC led, AMC led. The senior commanders are nowhere in the rating chain of General Dahl, General Bingham, etc. They're in the mission rating chain. So when we discuss the terminology of the ACOMs, it's FORSCOM senior commanders, TRADOC senior commanders, AMC senior commanders. We have a habit of saying, Bragg's FORSCOM, but really the right terminology is Bragg is a FORSCOM senior commander-led installation. That's just a mouthful. So even though those senior commanders are rated by the mission side, it's our responsibility as IMCOM, and this change that I briefed you on, I'm nowhere in the rating chain of AMC leadership. I'm still within the IMCOM rating chain. Now, AMC for me, and I've also been to FORSCOM because I set it up for all three, but for AMC, they opened their arms to me, gave me a great place in their headquarters. My intent was to move somewhere within the Garrison footprint, but AMC, nope, you're more than welcome, be part of the team, but my rating chain stays within IMCOM. So it's up to us to ensure that that service that's provided, as the question asked, to the various tenants on an installation are provided equally and fairly. And that's done through different processes. Many of you are familiar with the IPBs that are done, the IPL that comes out of that, the interaction that takes place, the requirements I have in 600-20 to collaborate with the senior commander to make sure those different missions are met. So that's a good question.
Okay. All right, Pat. You got it. Sure, your question.
All right, so this is not technology related, but I have to answer this one. I'm just teasing. All right, so how has the drawdown of civilians in IMCOM impacted the morale and retention of the garrison workforce? And how have you dealt with it? All right, well, you guys know this. It's a leadership by walking around. I tell, you have to make it, it's okay to have fun. So I've taken the different tack to encourage folks, if you want to come to work there, create an environment and a climate where it's okay to let your hair down a little bit and enjoy the people you work with. And matter of fact, you can get more work out of them. I work at Joint Base Myer Henderson Hall, okay? I have 46 general officers that live on my bases. Every one of them, make no mistake, is my boss, in addition to Mr. Tindoll and General Dahl and General fill in the blank, right? So it's about having an atmosphere. It's stressful enough, okay? Let's dial it down a little bit, have a little fun, and we can work it through, and don't stress yourself out. And then the obvious thing is, of course, leveraging technology, right? Technology in of itself doesn't mean anything unless it drives new ways and constructs to fight and process, right? So what it does, I think we get distracted with the latest sexy widget, but it takes a different mindset to correctly align it with the process and the function to create those efficiencies. So that would be my dual prong answer.
Okay. Cool.
Can I just add into that a little bit? One thing I found too is transparency. If you tell the workforce what's going on and you tell them how they fit into the role, it makes all the difference in the world.
Amen.
And I mean, we have the best civilian DOD employees that I have ever seen in my life.
Amen.
And with that, I mean, as long as you're honest and truthful with them, and you tell them this year, it's not the year to buy the brand new F-150, it's just not. Wait a couple. But it goes a long way.
All right.
I would agree with that too. So my question is, we talked this morning a little bit about the importance of relationship with local communities, the importance of integrated planning. Does your local communities participate in the installation master planning? I'm coming up on my first IPB in May, and so I don't know if they have in the past, but I certainly welcome them into the fold. One of the major things that I spend a lot of my time doing is what happens outside the fence. And so I spend a lot of time with my Board of Supervisors in Fairfax County. I spend a lot of time with my school board members. I spend a lot of time Supervisor Stork and Supervisor McKay and Ms. Belvoir and all the folks that I can glad hand with. I go to a lot of receptions, but it's more about reminding them that I own a house in Fairfax County and I'm a parent and all those things that we have in common. And so I want them to know about what's going on Fort Belvoir because I only have 2,700 people that live on post. The majority of of the 49,000 that work, live, and play on Fort Belvoir live in Fairfax County or Prince William County or fill in the blank county, because most of the people that I take care of live with them, and so that's why I want them involved. So yes, good relationships with the people in my county and outside the fence is really important to me, so I want them involved in my planning board. So hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, I've got, and looking at the time, probably the last one, another great question. With the emphasis associated with budget, I had mentioned a 100 million target regarding reorganization of some of the installations, use contractor support, providing base operating support, which can be significant for a DPW budget. One, with the changes to support readiness, how is boss management changing? Now, the way I would answer that, and I'm not sure exactly what's meant, but the way I'd answer that is the senior commander has the authority to make the decision of what happens or does not happen on installation. So if he decides that you're going to wait 2 hours in line to get inside the post for access control, then it's going to be 2 hours. So the way it's changing, senior commanders have the authority to make those decisions, and that makes it fit to try to palm it, but that's where we're at today. Next, what acquisition approaches are we considering to save dollars? A lot's been said about privatization. Privatization is a big deal. Another thing we're working hard is standard PWSs and standard QASP. By having that, it's going to be much easier for the MIC to put established. It's going to be easier for us to do it with our CORs as we work with their KOs. So we're working hard. Matter of fact, Angie and I just had a meeting the other day with a MIC, working hard as the pilot for a whole base concept we're going to use Belvoir as the pilot, and we're going to use that as a standard PWS and work from there. So we're trying to get into that. Now, the last thing everybody probably asks about is A76, because statute basically says we cannot put a contractor in place of what a government employee had held. That's tied our hands. So as jobs go down, the task remains. That doesn't mean we can put a contract back in place. So the only way to do that legally is through A76. Now, as a Garrison Commander, I did 4 of those. I did one for my DUM, my DOL, my DPW, my HR. That was the most painful thing I have ever done. And that's the last thing I'd wish on any of them. So the only way to throw a contract into where you had civilian with law is through an A76. And to be honest, I'm trying to avoid that at all costs. A number of the Army installations have been set aside, which arguably cost a premium. Any possibility of changing or pulling back set something for increased competition. Oh, it's 8B. That's what it is, 8B. We had this discussion the other day with the MIC leadership, because our concern was we need to relook how the 8B certain contracts are done, because they do cost a great deal more. You could save a lot of money if you meet the 8B quotas by making decisions to put these contracts in other places. And we were told flat no, that's not going to change, right? So that's a good question. Yeah. Well, this is 8B, but I think it means 8A, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Wait, before you, with the restructuring, you talk about how that affects authority.
Sir,
Their installation.
it doesn't. So, for example, for Title 10, when we were mobilizing soldiers through Atterbury and Shelby, as Atlantic Region Director, it's my responsibility to support Atterbury and Shelby. So the Guard came to me. I had to pay for every Title 10 function that occurred at Atterbury and Shelby. So if there's mobilization that occurs on any of the Guard installations, or from time to time if they need help with, and I'll be honest, they do a very good job of managing their installations, but they call on us, and we have that reciprocal responsibility. But there's another caveat to that, I think, real quick. It goes back to one of the range questions. Many of the Guard units and reserve units train on our installations. Now, the G3 of the Army sets the priorities for 121, the funding source 121. So they come out with a listing of those units that get supported. So with us losing assets, right now we're funded at 54% of the requirement for TSS. And that's basically your ranges and everything else. If 54%, imagine what that does. So what's being done to those Guard and Reserve units, unless they're on the G3's list, AP Hill, you will train this National Guard unit from Virginia, they have to pay reimbursables. We can't do it with 54% that's been given. Does that answer your question?
That is the last question and the last panel. And I think these garrison commanders and their boss did a great job after all that they had to sit and wait for until we came.